Evelyn had always lived a quiet life, the kind of life where days looked almost the same, and people rarely noticed when she walked into a room. Her hometown was small, and most people there had known her since she was a child. They remembered her as the shy girl who spent most of her time helping her mother, and that memory never really changed even after she grew older. She had dreams once, simple dreams of studying, working, and maybe having a family of her own someday. But life took a different path when her mother fell ill. Suddenly, Evelyn's world became smaller, and everything revolved around medicines, doctor visits, and long nights of caregiving. For many years, she stayed home to take care of her mother. She cooked, cleaned, and did everything she could to make her mother comfortable. People in town respected her for her patience, but respect did not always feel like love or connection. Her friends slowly drifted away, busy with their own jobs, marriages, and children. Evelyn didn't blame them, but the loneliness built a quiet home inside her heart. She did not complain, because complaining felt useless. Life simply moved on without waiting for her to catch up. After her mother passed away, the house felt painfully empty. It was not the kind of emptiness that came from a quiet room. It was the kind that echoed in her mind. She would wake up out of habit, thinking she needed to check on her mother, only to remember she was gone. For the first time in many years, she had free time. But she didn't know what to do with it. The world she had been part of had changed without her, and she felt like a stranger in her own town. She tried to look for work, but jobs were limited, and people preferred hiring younger workers who didn't have long gaps on their resumes. Evelyn didn't blame them, but the rejection made her doubt herself. She wondered if she had done the right thing by staying home all those years. She wondered if her life could ever start fresh. A small part of her believed maybe it was too late. One cold morning, while cleaning her mother's things, she found an old box filled with newspapers. They were stacked neatly, as if her mother had saved them for a reason. Evelyn started flipping through them without much interest, but one small advertisement caught her eye. It was simple, written in plain, honest words. A rancher in a faraway valley was looking for a companion, someone who could help with the ranch and also be a partner in life. It wasn't written in a desperate or dramatic voice. It was warm, steady, and sincere. The man described himself as hardworking, quiet, and looking for someone who valued peace more than excitement. Evelyn read it twice, then 3 times. Something about it made her pause. Maybe it was the honesty in the tone, or maybe it was because she was tired of feeling invisible. She had spent years giving love and care, but she couldn't remember the last time anyone had looked at her as someone who mattered. The idea of being wanted, even in a simple way, touched a soft place in her heart. Still, writing to a stranger felt frightening. She had never taken such a bold step in her life. She placed the newspaper aside and tried to forget it, but her mind kept returning to it over and over. That night, she sat at her small wooden desk, holding a pen, staring at a blank sheet of paper. She didn't know what to say. What if she wrote something foolish? What if he didn't reply? Or worse, what if he did reply and she regretted everything? But then she remembered all the years she spent waiting for life to change on its own. Nothing changed until she made a choice. So she started writing. Slowly at first, then with more confidence. She wrote about her life, her quiet nature, her love for simple routines, and her willingness to work hard. She didn't lie or pretend. She simply wrote who she was. When she mailed the letter, her hands shook, but a strange hope filled her chest. A week later, she received a reply. Caleb Turner's letter was short but thoughtful. He thanked her for writing, shared a bit about his ranch, and said he admired her honesty. He mentioned that he too had lived a life of silence for many years. His father had passed away, leaving him to manage the ranch alone. He worked from sunrise to sunset, caring for animals, fixing fences, planting crops, and trying his best to keep everything running. He admitted he wasn't good with words but promised he would always be truthful. Evelyn smiled while reading it. The letter wasn't romantic or poetic, but it felt real. Real was something she had missed for a long time. They continued exchanging letters for several weeks. Each letter revealed a little more about their lives. Evelyn learned that Caleb preferred reading in the evenings, instead of going into town. He liked the smell of fresh hay, and enjoyed the quiet sound of wind passing through the valley. She shared her love for cooking, simple music, and long walks. There was no pressure between them, no unrealistic promises, just two lonely hearts talking across a distance. Slowly, a connection formed. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It grew gently, like a small flame. Each letter made Evelyn feel seen, in a way she hadn't felt for years. Caleb never made her feel guilty for her past, or weak for her fears. He wrote to her as if she mattered, and that alone was enough to soften the heaviness she carried inside. One afternoon, she received a letter where Caleb wrote something he had never written before. He said he would like her to come to the ranch if she felt ready. He promised she would have space, time, and respect. He didn't expect her to be someone she was not. He simply wanted a partner who would walk beside him, not behind him. His words made her heart tremble, not with fear, but with a feeling she hadn't experienced in a long time. She felt wanted. That night, Evelyn sat by her window, holding the letter close. She looked at the empty rooms of her house, the walls that had heard her laughter, and her tears. She realized she had nothing tying her there anymore. Her mother was gone. Her friends had moved on. Her life was waiting for a new start, but she had to choose it herself. The idea of moving to a faraway place scared her. But staying where she was scared her even more. The thought of waking up each day in the same empty house felt like living in a paused life. After days of thinking, and many silent hours of pacing the floor, she made her decision. She wrote Caleb a letter saying she would come. Her hands were steady this time. She felt brave in a way she hadn't felt in years. When she packed her bags, she realized she didn't have much to take. A few dresses, her mother's old shawl, and a small framed picture of the two of them. She looked around the house one last time, whispering a soft goodbye. She didn't cry. She felt ready. The morning she left, the town seemed strangely quiet. She walked to the train station with her small suitcase. Her steps, slow but firm. People glanced at her, surprised to see her going somewhere, but she didn't stop to explain anything. This journey was hers alone. As the train started moving, she watched the familiar buildings fade into the distance. The fields passed by, the sky stretched wide above her, and she felt something she hadn't felt in many years, freedom mixed with hope. The journey to Caleb's ranch took several days. She switched trains and went through towns she had never heard of. She watched wide landscapes through the window, feeling small, but also strangely alive. With every mile, the distance between her old life and her new one grew larger. Fear was still there, whispering doubts, but hope was louder this time. When she finally stepped off the last train, she saw a man waiting near a dusty wagon. He stood tall, with broad shoulders and eyes that held quiet kindness. She didn't need to ask who he was. She felt it. Caleb Turner. He nodded gently when their eyes met, and she felt her heart settle. Her journey was no longer just a dream. It was the beginning of something real. Something she had longed for. Companionship, understanding, and maybe, someday, love. Evelyn stepped down from the train platform with her small suitcase in hand, feeling the warm afternoon sun touch her skin. The air smelled different from her hometown, earthy, open, and filled with the scent of fields and dust. She looked around until her eyes stopped on the man standing near a wooden wagon. He didn't wave or call out to her, but there was something steady and calm about him, something that made her heart slow down. Caleb Turner watched her quietly as she walked closer. He wasn't a man of many words, but the moment he saw her, he recognized her from the descriptions she had written about herself. Her simple dress, the neat bun of her hair, and the gentle way she held her luggage, all matched the picture he had imagined. For a moment, neither of them spoke. They simply took each other in, trying to understand the person they had been writing letters to for weeks. "You must be Evelyn," Caleb finally said in a soft, respectful voice. "And you're Caleb," she replied, gripping her suitcase a little tighter. Unsure if she should offer a handshake or simply stand still, he gave a small nod. Yes, I'm glad you made it safely. Those words, though simple, felt comforting. She smiled, and the tension in her shoulders slowly eased. Caleb reached for her bag. Not forcefully, but with quiet courtesy. I can carry it, he said. Evelyn hesitated for a second, then let him take it. They walked toward the wagon together. The horses shifted slightly, as if acknowledging her presence. Caleb helped her climb in, then took his place beside her. He lightly clicked his tongue, and the horses started moving forward, leaving the station behind. The ride to the ranch was long but peaceful. They passed tall grass that swayed in the wind, wooden fences that stretched across the land, and hills glowing under the sunlight. Evelyn looked around with wide eyes. She had never seen such open space before. Everything felt bigger here, the sky, the silence, even the distance between one house and the next. After a few minutes of quiet, Caleb asked, "Are you comfortable?" "Yes," she said honestly. "It's very peaceful here." He looked ahead, but she could see the small smile that formed on his lips. "I'm glad you think so. Not everyone likes this kind of quiet." "I do," she answered. "It feels free." Caleb didn't say anything, but he glanced at her with a look she couldn't fully understand, like he was relieved, or maybe just pleased. The rest of the journey passed with small conversations. He told her about the nearby town, the seasons, and the animals he kept on the ranch. She listened carefully, trying to picture each thing he described. She talked about her cooking, her years with her mother, and her love for simple daily routines. Their words were gentle, like two people learning how to walk beside each other, without stepping on each other's shadows. When they finally reached the ranch, Evelyn felt a slow breath escape her lips. The house wasn't very large, but it was clean and well built. The walls were made of smooth wood, and a small lantern hung near the front door. There was a stable nearby, a storage shed, and wide fields stretching into the horizon. The place felt lived in, quiet, lonely, but full of possibility. Caleb helped her down from the wagon, then picked up her suitcase. As he walked toward the house, he said, "This is your home now. At least, I hope it will feel that way." His simple honesty warmed her chest. She followed him inside. The living room had a comfortable look, with a small fireplace, wooden chairs, and a shelf filled with books. She ran her fingers lightly over one of the books and smiled. "You like reading?" she asked. "When I have time," he replied, putting the suitcase near a small guest room. "It helps with the quiet." She nodded. "I understand." He showed her around the house patiently, where the kitchen supplies were kept, where the water barrel was placed, and how the lamps worked. Evelyn listened closely, wanting to remember everything. When he opened the door to a small bedroom prepared for her, she noticed he had placed clean sheets, a simple rug, and a vase with dried flowers on a small table. "You didn't have to do all this," she said softly. "I wanted you to feel welcome," he answered. Those words reached deep into her heart. Not many people in her life had gone out of their way to make her feel comfortable. She touched the edge of the bed, grateful for his thoughtfulness. After she settled in, they shared a quiet meal of bread, soup, and fresh fruit. Evelyn could feel the shyness between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was natural, like two people learning the rhythm of each other's presence. Caleb ate slowly, as though he was careful not to make her feel rushed. "Tomorrow," he said gently, "I can show you the ranch. Only if you feel ready." "I'd like that," she replied. They cleaned up the dishes together. At one moment, they reached for the same cup, and their fingers lightly touched. Evelyn felt a small jolt inside her chest. Not fear, just awareness. Caleb quickly stepped back, giving her space, his ears slightly flushed. She pretended not to notice to save him from embarrassment. As the evening settled, Caleb lit a lamp and said goodnight. Evelyn watched him walk down the hall, his footsteps slow and thoughtful. When she closed her bedroom door, she leaned against it and breathed deeply. Everything around her was new, but not frightening. She felt like she had stepped into a different chapter of her life, one that wasn't filled with only duty and loss, but with the possibility of companionship. The next morning, she woke up early and stepped outside. The air was cool and smelled of fresh soil. Caleb was already up, feeding the horses. He moved with confidence, his actions steady and practiced. Evelyn admired his dedication. A man who worked this hard had a heart that knew responsibility. "Good morning," she called softly. Caleb turned, a little surprised to see her awake so early. "Good morning. I hope you slept well." "I did. This place is very peaceful." He nodded, pleased. "Would you like to learn how the ranch works today?" "Yes. I'd like to help," she said. They walked together across the yard. Caleb explained how to feed the chickens, where the extra hay was kept, and how to check the water supply. Evelyn listened carefully and practiced each task with patience. She wasn't used to this kind of work, but she found it fulfilling. There was something honest about caring for animals and tending to simple needs. At noon, they took a break under a shaded tree. Caleb handed her a cup of cool water. "Thank you," she said, taking a sip. "You're learning quick," he said gently. "Most people would take days to get used to all this." She smiled. "I'm trying. I want to be useful here." "You already are," he replied, surprising her with his sincerity. Evelyn looked at him, and for a moment, their eyes met and held. There was no rush between them, no pressure, just a growing trust built through small gestures. As the days passed, she became more familiar with the ranch. She started cooking meals, organizing the kitchen, and adding small touches to the house to make it feel warmer. Caleb never complained or questioned her choices. Instead, he seemed grateful, though he expressed it in quiet ways, fixing a loose door handle before she noticed it, bringing in fresh firewood, or making sure she didn't carry anything too heavy. One evening, after they finished dinner, they sat on the porch watching the sky turn shades of orange and pink. The silence between them wasn't awkward anymore. It was gentle and comforting. Evelyn felt safe sitting beside him. After a long pause, she looked down at her hands and whispered, "I miss being wanted." Caleb turned to her, surprised by the softness in her voice. Her words weren't loud, but they carried years of quiet pain. He didn't interrupt her. He simply waited. "I spent so much time taking care of others," she continued slowly, "that I forgot what it feels like to be someone people choose, someone they look forward to seeing." Caleb's chest tightened. He had known loneliness all his life, but hearing her express it so honestly made him see her in a deeper way. "You are wanted here," he said quietly, his voice steady but warm. "I don't just need help on the ranch. I'm glad you're here. As you." Evelyn felt her eyes sting, but she held her tears back. Not because she was sad, but because those words touched a place she had forgotten existed. The evening breeze moved gently around them. For the first time since she arrived, she felt not like a visitor or a burden, but like someone who belonged in this quiet corner of the world. She didn't respond right away. She simply let his words settle inside her heart. Caleb didn't push her to speak. He knew some moments didn't need many words. From that day on, something changed between them. It wasn't sudden or dramatic, but soft and steady, like a new warmth settling quietly inside a cold room. The days after Evelyn's quiet confession seemed to carry a different feeling across the ranch. Nothing dramatic changed, yet everything felt more alive. Caleb woke earlier than usual, as if motivated by something he couldn't fully name, and Evelyn felt a lightness inside her that she hadn't experienced in years. Both of them were careful, gentle, and still a bit shy, but the silence between them had transformed. It no longer felt like emptiness. It felt like comfort. One morning, Evelyn stepped out of the house and found Caleb already outside, fixing a loose board on the porch. He paused when he saw her. "Good morning," he said with a small smile. "Good morning," she replied. "You're up early again." "There's always something to fix," he answered, tapping the board lightly. "But I noticed you tripped on this step yesterday. Thought I should take care of it." Evelyn looked down at the board, then back at him. You didn't have to. I wanted to, he said quietly. The simple words touched her more than he knew. No one had fixed things for her in a long time. Most of her life had been spent fixing things for others. Later that day, they worked side by side feeding the animals. Evelyn was learning faster than she expected. Caleb showed her how to hold the feed bucket so the goats wouldn't knock it over, and she laughed when they eagerly surrounded her. You're doing great, Caleb said, watching her with gentle amusement. I'm just trying not to fall, she replied while avoiding a curious goat's nose. You're more confident every day, he said. His voice held quiet pride, something that warmed her deeply. In the afternoon, they repaired a small fence together. Evelyn held the wooden posts steady, while Caleb hammered them into place. She watched the way his hands moved, strong but careful. He always made sure she kept her fingers away from the edges, always looked up to check if she was tired, always slowed his pace to match hers. At one point, Evelyn brushed a strand of hair from her face, leaving a small smudge of dirt on her cheek. Caleb noticed but didn't mention it. Instead, he reached into his pocket, pulled out a clean cloth, and handed it to her. She saw the gesture for what it was: a man who cared, even when his words were few. As the days passed, they shared more stories. In the evenings, after dinner, they often sat by the fireplace. Caleb talked about growing up on the ranch with his father, how he learned to ride horses, repair tools, and take responsibility from a young age. His father had been a strict man at times, but a good one. Losing him had changed everything. After his father passed, the ranch became both his duty and his loneliness. Evelyn listened closely, realizing how much strength it took for Caleb to keep going on his own. She shared her own memories too, how she used to sit by her mother's bedside reading her stories, how she cooked meals even when she was exhausted, how she learned to stay calm even when fear sat quietly in her chest. Caleb listened with deep respect. He never interrupted her or rushed her. Sometimes, he simply nodded. Other times, he said softly, "You went through a lot. More than most people know." Their vulnerability built a bridge between them, slow, steady, and strong. One late afternoon, a sudden storm rolled in from the mountains. The sky darkened quickly, and the wind picked up, swirling dust around the ranch. Evelyn rushed outside to help Caleb bring the animals into shelter. Rain began to fall hard, and the wind whipped their clothes, but they worked together, guiding the horses and goats into the barn. "Stay close to me," Caleb said firmly but gently, making sure she didn't slip on the wet ground. "I'm fine," she insisted, though her heart raced with the noise of thunder. "I know," he said, "but I want to make sure." Inside the barn, Evelyn held a lantern while Caleb secured the doors. The storm roared outside, shaking the roof lightly. She tried to stay calm, but storms had always unsettled her. Caleb noticed the tension in her hands as she clutched the lantern. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice softening. She nodded, though her eyes revealed the truth. Caleb walked closer, keeping a respectful distance. "It's loud, I know, but we're safe. The barn is strong." His calmness helped her breathe easier. They waited together, talking in low voices, until the storm eased. It was the first time they had faced something difficult side by side, and the way they handled it together felt natural, almost instinctive. When the storm finally quieted, Caleb looked at her with a gentle expression. "You did well," Evelyn smiled shyly. "I just followed you." "That's enough," he replied. "We make a good team." That simple sentence stayed with her long after they returned to the house. Over the next few days, their small moments of connection grew. Caleb often prepared a cup of warm tea for her in the mornings before she even stepped out of her room. Evelyn began cooking meals that reminded her of home, and she noticed how Caleb always paused to thank her, even if the words were simple. The sincerity behind them was unmistakable. One quiet evening, she found him sitting by the small bookshelf, polishing an old wooden box. She walked in softly. "What's that?" she asked. Caleb looked up. "My father's box. He carved it years ago." He hesitated before adding, "I keep important things in here." She nodded, respecting the personal nature of the item. She didn't ask what was inside. After a moment, with surprising vulnerability, Caleb said. I used to think I'd spend the rest of my life alone. The ranch felt too big for just one person. But I didn't know how to let someone into it. Evelyn sat across from him. It's not easy to open up. No, he agreed. But you make it feel less hard. Her heart fluttered at the words, though she hid it behind a small smile. I'm glad I can help. Another week passed, and they found themselves settling into a natural rhythm. They shared breakfast most mornings, worked together during the day, and rested in peaceful silence during the evenings. Their connection wasn't fast or dramatic, it was slow, meaningful, and real. One afternoon, Evelyn slipped while carrying a bucket of water. She didn't fall, but she wobbled dangerously. Caleb was beside her in an instant, his hand reaching out to steady her arm. You okay? He asked, concern tightening his voice. Yes, she said, breathing hard. Just lost balance. He didn't let go immediately. He kept his hand there, warm and reassuring, until he was sure she was steady. When their eyes met, something unspoken passed between them, something warm, something promising. Caleb stepped back slowly, clearing his throat, trying to hide the soft redness rising in his cheeks. Evelyn pretended not to notice, but inside, her heart felt warm. That evening, Evelyn baked fresh bread, and the warm smell filled the house. Caleb paused in the doorway, breathing in deeply. That smells wonderful, he said. It's my mother's recipe, she replied quietly. He walked closer. She must have been a kind woman. She was, Evelyn said softly. She didn't have much, but she gave everything she could. Caleb nodded thoughtfully. You're a lot like her, I think. Evelyn blinked, touched by his words. No one had ever compared her to her mother in such a gentle way. After dinner, they sat outside beneath a sky full of stars. The quiet between them felt warm and alive. Caleb spoke first. I'm grateful you came here. Evelyn looked at him, surprised. I wasn't sure I belonged at first. You do, he said simply. She swallowed, emotions rising gently in her chest. The ranch, once silent and lonely, now felt like a place where she could breathe freely. After a moment, she whispered, I'm glad I came too. There was no need for more words. The night breeze carried the rest, the understanding, the closeness, the hope. They sat together under the stars, not touching, not rushing, simply sharing the same quiet space. And in that peaceful moment, both of them realized something important. They were no longer two lonely people, living separate lives. They were slowly becoming partners not just in work, but in trust, healing, and quiet companionship. The weeks that followed moved with a natural warmth, as if the ranch itself had begun to breathe easier. Evelyn found herself adjusting to the rhythm of the land. Early mornings, long days of work, evenings filled with soft light and peaceful silence. She no longer felt like a visitor walking carefully around someone else's life. She felt like part of a shared routine, a shared home, a shared hope. Caleb noticed these changes too. Every day, he found more small reasons to smile, like the way she hummed softly while arranging the kitchen shelves, or how she tied her hair back before starting the chores, or how she looked at the sky each morning as if grateful just to be there. He admired her without making it obvious, but admiration showed in the way he spoke to her, the way he watched her, the way he made sure she never carried more than she needed to. One quiet morning, he asked, Would you like to visit the upper field today? I want to show you something. Evelyn nodded, intrigued by the soft excitement in his voice. They packed a small basket with bread and fruit, then walked together toward the hill behind the ranch. The path was lined with wildflowers, and the air carried the sweet scent of grass warmed by the sun. Evelyn walked slowly, not because she was tired, but because she wanted to take in everything: the colors, the breeze, the view, and the presence of the man walking beside her. When they reached the top of the hill, she paused in surprise. Before them stretched a quiet, shining lake, a hidden place she hadn't seen before. The water reflected the sky, turning shades of soft blue and gentle gold. It's beautiful, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Caleb smiled, pleased by her reaction. I come here when I need to think. I thought, Maybe you'd like it too. Evelyn sat down on a smooth rock near the water's edge. The lake felt peaceful, untouched, and safe, just like the feelings growing in her heart. They shared the food from the basket, talking about small things at first: the weather, the animals, the upcoming changes they needed to make on the ranch. But eventually, the conversation turned more personal. You know, Caleb began, looking at the lake, I never imagined I'd meet someone who would bring so much calm into my life. Evelyn's breath caught slightly, though she kept her gaze on the water. You've given me calm too. It wasn't always like that, he admitted. For years, I only knew how to work and keep going. I never thought much about companionship or a family. She glanced at him. What changed? You did, he said, looking straight into her eyes. Her heart softened at the sincerity in his tone. She didn't blush or look away. She simply held his gaze, feeling the weight of the moment. After a long silence, she said quietly, You make me feel valued here. I didn't feel that for a long time. Caleb nodded slowly. You deserve to feel valued. You deserve more than just a place to stay. You deserve a home, and someone who cares. Evelyn felt her eyes warm. She blinked slowly, steadying herself. She didn't want to cry. She wanted to absorb the meaning behind his words. They stayed at the lake for a long while, sitting together in quiet comfort. By the time they walked back, the sun was dipping lower in the sky. The ranch looked golden, touched by the evening light. Evelyn felt something shift inside her, something deep and certain. In the days that followed, their connection only grew. They cooked meals together, shared stories late into the night, and walked around the ranch at sunset. Sometimes they spoke, sometimes they didn't. They didn't need many words. Their growing closeness lived in the small acts, the gentle glances, the shared laughter, the way she reached for the kettle before he asked, or the way he fixed her garden tools before she even mentioned they were loose. One evening, the sky was a soft orange, and the air felt warm. Evelyn was in the barn brushing one of the horses while Caleb was stacking hay. When he finished, he leaned against the barn door and watched her quietly. She had a peaceful way of moving, gentle and patient. You're good with them, he said. She looked up. They're very sweet. You're sweet with them, he corrected softly. She laughed, a soft sound that made his heart feel strangely lighter. I try my best. Caleb stepped closer, his expression thoughtful. Evelyn, may I ask you something? Of course, she replied, setting down the brush. He paused, choosing his words with care. Do you feel at home here? Evelyn swallowed gently, surprised by how easy the answer came to her. Yes, I do. Caleb's shoulders relaxed. For weeks, he had been carrying the quiet worry that she might feel trapped or overwhelmed. Hearing her say she felt at home eased a weight he didn't realize he had been carrying. I'm glad, he said. More than you know. Quote, Evelyn stepped a little closer. Do you feel the same? About me being here? Caleb's answer was immediate, firm, honest. Yes, I do. Every day. A soft moment passed between them, warm, quiet, and filled with understanding. Evelyn felt her heart settle in a way she had never felt before. That night, after dinner, Caleb stood near the fireplace while Evelyn cleaned the last of the dishes. He looked nervous, more than she had ever seen him. When she returned to the room, he took a slow breath. Evelyn, can we talk? He asked. She nodded, sensing the seriousness in his voice. She sat down, folding her hands gently on her lap. Caleb sat across from her, leaning forward slightly. His voice was calm, but filled with emotion. When you came here, I wasn't sure what to expect. I didn't know if we would get along or if you would even stay. But you changed this house. You changed the way my days feel. I find myself looking forward to every morning, because I know you'll be part of it. Evelyn listened with her whole heart, feeling each word like a soft touch. You brought peace into my life, he continued. And kindness. And hope. I don't want that to end. I don't want to imagine this place without you." Her breath trembled slightly, but she remained calm. Caleb's voice softened even more. "If you feel the same, I would like us to build a future here together. Not because of need, not because of convenience, but because I want you by my side." For a long moment, Evelyn didn't speak. She was overwhelmed not with fear, but with emotion. She had never heard someone speak to her with such honesty, such quiet love, such gentle certainty. She moved a little closer, her voice soft but steady. "I want that too." Caleb let out a breath he had been holding. His shoulders relaxed, and a soft, grateful smile appeared on his face. Evelyn continued, her voice trembling with truth. "For years, I didn't feel seen. I felt like I lived behind everyone else's lives. But here, with you, I feel wanted. I feel whole." Caleb reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wished. She didn't. Their hands met softly, gently, warmly. It was the first time they had held hands. But it felt natural, as if their hands had been waiting for this moment for a long time. They sat together in quiet stillness, sharing the warmth of a new beginning. In the days that followed, they talked about everything: hopes, fears, plans, the future. They discussed how they would manage the ranch together and how they would support each other through the seasons of life. Each conversation brought them closer. The ranch no longer felt like Caleb's lonely land. It felt like a shared dream, a shared home. Months passed, filled with steady joy. Evelyn planted flowers around the porch, and Caleb built a small garden fence to protect them. She cooked meals filled with warmth, and he always made sure she never lacked anything she needed. They became partners in every sense, working together, laughing together, resting together. And one quiet evening, under a sky full of glowing stars, Caleb stood beside her on the porch and whispered softly, "I'm grateful every day that you came here." Evelyn leaned her head lightly against his shoulder. "I'm grateful you wanted me here." 9. There was no grand announcement, no dramatic moment. Their love grew the same way everything else on the ranch grew, slowly, gently, naturally. Evelyn had once said she missed being wanted, but now, in the heart of the quiet valley, with the rancher who saw her deeply and cared for her honestly, she no longer missed it. She was wanted, she was valued, she was home, and together, they began the next chapter of their life, two hearts that had once felt lonely, now walking forward, side by side, building a peaceful, loving future on the land that brought them together.